Hello and welcome inside episode 12 of the Scully Scoop podcast. I'm your host, Adam Scully. Awesome to have Sherry Basson on my last edition of the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, I have a bit of an updated backdrop, thanks to my dad for helping me with that. But my draft jersey from the Ontario Hockey League is right behind me, 2008, 12 years ago. Great to reminisce and talk about Sherry Basson with some great times way back in the day. Well, my guest this week goes to my current job at TSN, and that is Lindsay Hamilton, who's one of the anchors at SportsCenter, who is now doing some work with the Quibi app and TSN's involvement with that. We'll discuss that and a whole lot more, plus her golf game. I think it's time now to go to Lindsay. And we're pleased to welcome SportsCenter anchor Lindsay Hamilton to the Scully Scoop podcast. Lindsay, how are you? And thanks for joining me.
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a long time. Quarantine has been wild for all of us. How's it been for you?
Oh boy. It's a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Some days I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm finding my groove. I have my home studio. And then other days I miss people so much. And of course, I feel for everyone going through this, whether it's jobs or frontline like healthcare workers. So it's a strange time, but we're all getting through it.
Something a lot of people have done in quarantine is cutting their own hair. Have you gone down that road yet?
So I haven't, as you can probably tell, because I've got quite the mane. Actually, I shouldn't say I haven't. I cut my bangs by myself a couple weeks ago. And I was careful to do it half inch by half inch, because I have learned from the past, you can always cut more. You can't cut less. You can't go the other way. But for men, I feel for you guys, because I've seen a lot of shaven heads and some disasters. But your hair looks pretty good.
Okay, so I gotta say, my last day in the office was March 17th, so St. Paddy's Day. I needed a haircut around there, so about 2 weeks into it, I gave myself a haircut. I didn't really touch the top, but I faded the sides. I was pretty proud of what I did, actually.
Now, had you done a self haircut before, or was that the first?
No. I haven't done one before, but I'm very fortunate to have my beard trimmer actually has there's a bunch of different notches you can go to. So I was I didn't YouTube how to do it, but I had my phone out and a mirror, and it took 90 minutes to do something that would have been about 10 minutes for a regular barber probably.
Oh gosh.
And then the second time I cut my hair, call it 4 or 5 weeks ago, I got a little cocky. I took a little off the top. I actually spent about an hour Googling, trying to find some thinning shears. Probably a good thing I didn't find it, because my hair would be a disaster. But I got a little cocky around here. It was a little high and tight and short for about 2 weeks, but now it's grown in relatively nicely, I'd say.
And now maybe you'll save yourself a few bucks down the road, because you can be your own barber.
I have to agree. And my dad actually gave himself a high and tight. It might be about a 0.5 on the sides. It's a little close to the wood, but
the sideburns are a big thing for guys too. I once cut a boyfriend in university's hair, and I didn't realize the sideburns were such a thing. And I apparently shaved them almost right off, and I got in a lot of trouble for that. So learn my lesson.
Well, speaking of boyfriends and haircuts, Brooks Kepka, his girlfriend cut his hair. This would have been, the days all blend together. I want to say 6 weeks ago maybe. And he was also sporting the mustache.
There are a few strange looks out there, but you know what? I have to say, during quarantine times, anything goes. You get a free pass.
Yeah, you definitely get a free pass. A lot of people are saying the quarantine 15 maybe. I've been fortunate not to go down that road yet, but I know something that you're very passionate about as well as fitness.
Yes.
How have the workouts been in quarantine? Have you been looking up things on YouTube, Instagram, that sort of thing?
You know what? I've been trying to get creative. I love playing sports as much as possible. So that obviously has been very weird, just because the limitations on everything. But I have a hill near my house that I've been getting to on off-peak hours when it's not busy. So I've been doing a lot of hill sprints. And if I hit my PB, if I get a personal best, I get to roll down the hill. That's kind of my reward to myself. Doing all the strange things around the house, whether it's chair dips on a chair somewhere in the house, jacks on a couch in the corner, a lot of yoga in the backyard. So trying to get creative. And then I got out my very first round, 9 holes of golf today. I hadn't been out. So thank the Lord that golf courses are open in a safe way and everyone's socially distanced. But that was such a nice just afternoon out in the sun and clear my head.
Yeah, we'll get into golf a little later. I've actually played 12 rounds so far. I've been a little aggressive on the golf, just getting out
I'm
of.
not surprised by that. I knew you're probably out there every single day. Well done.
I had my best round of the year last night. I actually had it under par for a little bit, but then choked down the stretch, unfortunately. But we'll get into golf a little later because we've actually played some golf together, and we'll discuss that in thorough detail a little later in the podcast here. Yeah. Another thing a lot of people have been doing during quarantine is Netflix. Is there anything, were you on Tiger King, Too Hot to Handle, any of those brilliant shows?
Okay, so I haven't dove into either of those, but I did watch, Ozark. So I've gotten through every single episode, but I'm saving the very last one. And there's a little bit of a story here so I moved out of my condo during the quarantine time just to be at my family home with more space for the Quibi studio, etc. So my mom and I were watching Ozark. We watched all the episodes together. It was like the thing, hey, you want to watch an episode? Sure. And then I think it was last week, we'd been waiting to watch the finale of season 3 together. And I'm like, do you want to watch the very last episode together? And she casually goes, I watched it last night without me.
Wow.
I'm like, that has got to break all social TV rules, right? Like, you got to wait for the person you're watching it with. So now I'm going to watch the very last episode by myself. But I don't know why I haven't watched it. I'm like holding onto it. It's the one thing I've been looking forward to. That's
interesting. Yeah. So watch it alone, get the tub of ice cream out, get the slippers out. And yeah, I haven't seen Ozark per se. I did see my family. We watched The Newsroom, which has now been around for a number of years. And one thing, you haven't seen it. Okay.
The Jordan documentary. Have you watched that yet?
I did watch it. I thought it was pretty. It was, I mean, obviously from Jordan's perspective, some of it, and there's been some fallout maybe per se, but who would you say would be the next athlete that you'd love to see some sort of similar documentary around, similar to The Last Dance?
That's a great question. I don't know of an individual athlete. I'd love to follow the Warriors in something similar, like as a super team. I think that'd be really fascinating. Mm-hmm. And then there's so many athletes that I would easily watch their life story. I don't know if they'd have quite the following that MJ did, right. But anything like that kind of storytelling where you peel back the layers and you go into all the different sides, and even the timeline at first was a little confusing because they were jumping all over the place. But then when you piece all the different elements together, I thought it was such beautiful storytelling.
It was brilliantly done. It was awesome to have something to look forward to every Monday here in Canada. It aired Sunday in the US. For me, obviously, it'd probably be impossible to have this happen, but Tiger Woods, to have everything that's happened in his life from, growing up and with his father and his parents, and the scandal, of course, and then what happened with the DUI, and then the return to glory. Yeah. I think that'd be brilliant. I'm getting goosebumps saying return to glory as well. Can you tell I'm a Tiger fan?
So you've got to start writing the script then. That's the solution right here. You're going to give us the next documentary.
Okay. Yeah, me and Tiger are definitely boys. But no, it was fun to watch The Last Dance. Another thing I know that we both enjoy watching, and this is just brilliant, must-see TV, Mondays on ABC, The Bachelor. And
we're going to go here.
Of course we were going here. First of all, did you see the Listen to Your Heart Bachelor show that aired throughout quarantine?
Okay. I didn't, because I will watch The Bachelor and The Bachelorette every episode, but I just can't get into all of these spin-offs, like the island one.
Paradise, yeah.
I've never watched an episode of that. I didn't watch Listen to Your Heart. I don't know. I stick to the OG. I go the original route only. Was it good? Should I watch it?
I mean, because there really wasn't much, there was nothing else on TV, I thought it was okay. It was better than I thought it was going to be. There were similar cheesiness that The Bachelor always has, and Chris Harrison is just the best host ever. But I know some people weren't the biggest fan of Bachelor Peter. What were your thoughts on Peter's season?
You know what? It's a hard job. you got all these contestants and everyone puts you under their microscope. I got Kara Wagland into The Bachelor this past season. I don't think she had watched a single season ever. And I even took a little hiatus myself. I was out for like 6 or 7 seasons. So I got her onto the show. And this was, I think, either the first in a long time or the first ever. And I'm like, this is a bad season to start with. You know what I mean? Because there was just so much going on, all the drama. I really liked Madison, was a big fan of her. Peter's mom, was her name Barbara?
Yes.
Too involved. Like, parents cannot be that involved in their child's love life. You just gotta back off a little bit. But yeah, this season, lots of drama.
Yeah,
if you heard this, I think it's coming up, like a Bachelor highlight, a series, the entire season in one night. I think they're going to do something like that. So I know you'll be a fan. So watch out for that.
Our Bachelor insider, Lindsay Hamilton, has now joined us. No, I thought I thought the season itself, I mean, as you know, I have a viewing party. I watch with buddies and significant others if they're in the mix or not, or some think it's boring.
Can I quickly, do males come to your Bachelor viewing parties?
Oh, yeah.
Like single males?
Single males. Actually, by the finale, there were 4 of us, and we were all actually single. And this was just before the start of quarantine. I think it was the Tuesday before. It was the day before the player on the Utah Jazz tested positive. I think that was when the finale was.
Oh my gosh! So you guys you're committed.
Yes. And I think we actually mentioned this. The Bachelor Peter looks a lot like a buddy of mine. And I think when we were golfing together, I almost looked him up on Instagram because they look pretty similar, actually.
You have your very own Bachelor.
It's too bad. I mean, he lives with his girlfriend and they've been dating for 7 years. So he'll never be on The Bachelor.
No, not on.
Yeah, The Bachelor is just tremendous. But let's go to your career now. Quibi. This is a new thing that's launched. For those who haven't heard about it, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, you're seeing my Quibi set behind me, or part of my set. If I could do a 360 with my camera right now, you'd see all of the lights and the camera and everything else going on. But essentially, Quibi stands for Quick Bites, and it's an app on people's phone. It's content designed entirely for your cell phone. And every single show on the app is 10 minutes or less. So I host a sports show called Sports AM by TSN. It's always 5 minutes or less. And there's other great shows, like we were talking about some of the stuff we've been binging. LeBron James has an awesome show on it called I Promise, all about the public school in Akron, Ohio. There's a new series called Blackballed, which is really entertaining. Iron Sharpens Iron, athletes training with other athletes in different sports. So it really covers every single genre of TV. And again, in those little bite-sized moments.
Oh, that's fascinating. So what would be, I guess, a night in the life for you working with Quibi?
Yeah, it's strange, but we have a bit of a routine, a work from home routine now. So we'll usually jump on a team call around 7:00, and that's when everyone jumps on our daily Zoom call. We discuss the big sports stories of the day, what we think should make the show. If there's anything that happened, we have a segment called This Day in Sports. So sometimes we'll look back 25 years ago on this day and the big iconic moment. And then after that, everyone starts piecing together the script. They're finding interview clips and graphics. And then I'll come down into my home studio. Again, this is part of the backdrop. And we'll record it. I turn on my camera. I turn on my lights. I've posted a few little behind the scenes videos on Instagram. And people are so curious. Like, do you set that up every night? Does someone come in? No one comes into my home every night at all. I'm a one-woman show right now in regards to filming. And then I grab my SD card, plug it in my computer, and our very talented editors pick it up and go to town. So it's amazing what the team has been able to accomplish from their individual homes. I mean, the TSN newsroom, that in itself is magical to sometimes sit back and watch how an episode or a Sports Center or, a special is created. So to see the fact that we're still being able to produce content daily from our homes, it's a testament to the people I work with, that's for sure.
It really is. It's spectacular that Sports Center and Sports AM by TSN on Quibi has been on, for a lot of quarantine. It really has been awesome. One thing that we were actually texting about before this is the backdrop. How did you decide what was going to be on your backdrop?
Okay, so I had a few different options, and then it got sent to a panel of people that all said, we don't like this.
Wow.
So yeah, there was a few people who weighed in, but it's a hodgepodge of there's a tennis ball, my old field hockey stick. We got a baseball bat. This is my replica championship ring.
Wow. Okay.
So that goes in the background. I almost convinced my sister that was real. It's not. It's a hodgepodge of stuff. I also have an overflow of sports paraphernalia to my side off camera. But as you know, it's trying to make it somewhat presentable and in the home studio space.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. That's the first thing I see now. Even earlier today, President Barack Obama had one, and it was sort of that looks kind of empty behind there. Maybe fill it up, but it's been pretty cool to see different people's backdrop. So that's what you're currently doing at TSN. But walk us through how you got to TSN.
Oh man, it's quite the journey. I'll try and give you the Coles notes version.
Yeah.
So I think everyone who gets into sports broadcasting has their own unique path. I'm one of 5 in my family, and a number of my siblings are in healthcare. And I always make the joke, for them, it's very linear. You do step A, then B, then C. Whereas anyone in the world of broadcasting knows, you're moving to small towns, you're doing a gazillion different jobs, you're just trying to figure out a way to make it work. So when I was really young, I got involved in theater and film. And growing up, I always loved talking to people, and I love sports. Those were kind of my 2 passions. And when I was about 13, I got involved in television. So I had an agent in Toronto. My mom, bless her heart, would drive me to auditions back and forth in Toronto after school while playing a ton of sports. And then when I was about 18, I got my first national broadcasting gig as the host of the Family Channel.
Oh.
Did that for just under 6 years. And then I simultaneously went to McMaster University, did a double major in communications and film there while I played varsity lacrosse. So that was the best school because it was close enough to Toronto that I could still keep working for family, while still play lacrosse and get my degree. And it was during my time at Mac that I knew I wanted to start veering into sports broadcasting. So started a sports radio show, did some work with the CFL after university, worked with the Pan Am Games, worked in production, worked in writing, worked in news for a little bit, worked for Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment with the Marlies and the Leafs a bit, worked for CBC and their national morning program. And then it was from CBC that I got the call from TSN, and coming on, I guess, 4 years at TSN. So
I was just going to ask you. Yeah.
I tried to make it a Coles Notes version. I feel like I rambled, but that in a nutshell is how I got to TSN.
I was going to ask, where haven't you worked?
I've worked in a lot of different places. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, for someone who might be watching this or listening to this, do you have any advice to someone getting into the industry in normal times, not during quarantine or COVID?
I'd say create your own momentum as much as possible. I think nowadays, and I mean, you're doing this podcast from your home, I'm doing a sports show from my home. We have the tools to produce our own content, which is incredible. And I think if young students can start writing or, create a blog or create their own video content or podcast or whatever it might be, I would just recommend to keep creating, get those reps in. Because that's what it's all about, right? You're trying to get comfortable with your own voice, get comfortable in front of a camera. And then, this sounds simple enough, but when you not only want it, you're a hard worker, but when you know your why, why are you doing what you do? What makes you passionate about it? What is your end goal? I think that will give you a little extra fire under your butt to figure out what that next step is.
I like that. That's fascinating. We're in conversation here with SportsCenter anchor Lindsay Hamilton. Lindsay, you said you've been at TSN now for 4 years or so. You've had the opportunity to interview many different athletes. If you could pick a favorite interview, what would that be?
That's a tough question. I've interviewed a lot of wonderful people. I would say, so it wasn't even my interview, but some of the media sessions that we had with Brooke Henderson, obviously we worked there last summer with CP Women's Open at Magna. I thought they were just so interesting. I really respect her as an athlete, as a person. I think she's so well spoken. And anytime she speaks, I'm just really I gravitate towards what she says. Dikembe Mutombo, he came in one day to the TSN studio, and I got to interview him. He was, oh gosh, so much taller than me, Scully. And he did the classic, like, no, which was wonderful. And he's done amazing humanitarian work. Dana White, when I've interviewed him, I think he's a really great interview. But there's been a lot. It's hard to pick just one.
Yeah, it's funny. When I had Kara Wagland on this podcast, she also said Dana White. And now, whenever I see his interviews, because the UFC is back in action, I love watching him because he's thorough. He gives some great detail. As long as the question's great, he gives some great insight. And he seems like a really respectable guy. But those are some people that you've interviewed. How about on the bucket list side of things? Who are a couple athletes who you think, man, I really want to interview them?
The bucket list is long. I would say Billie Jean King is up there for me. I would love to interview her. After watching the documentary and just because of who he is, I think Michael Jordan would be a fascinating interview.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to Brooke Henderson. I would love to have like a long sit down with her and, just really peel back a few layers. I think she has such a fascinating story, and again, respect her so much as a person, but it's hard to choose just one. I mean, honestly, anyone who is open to interview, I just love talking to people and, figuring out their story and their why and how they got to where they are today. So there's almost, and Roger Federer, he'd be up there too. I'd love to interview Fed.
I like that expression, your why. I've never heard that before, but I really enjoy that. Have you been starstruck by any interviews, whether they're joining you in studio or via satellite?
I don't know. I don't know if I have. And I don't think that's not because I've talked to some wonderful people, but I think at the end of the day, if you just try to remind yourself, like, they're just a person too. They've obviously done incredible things. And I think a lot of people have, again, I want to go back to some of the humanitarian work people have done or their fight for gender equality. Like, it's so admirable, but I don't know if I've necessarily been starstruck. There's been moments where I kind of like pinch myself in the middle of the interview and I'm like, okay, this is happening. Like, I remember this was back when I was working in entertainment, when I interviewed Justin Bieber, and like moments before the interview, he did the hair flip because at the time he still the shag kind of, and I just remember being like, oh, like this is happening right now. We're about to begin this interview. So sometimes I think in the midst of an interview, you can have moments like that.
Justin Bieber, that's fascinating. That's not many people can say they've interviewed Justin Bieber.
It was fun to talk to the Biebs. It was back when he was doing his Never Say Never 3D movie. And again, he was just, he's in the peak of this teenage fandom. And I will say I've never seen just the crowds and the spectacle around someone like I did when we interviewed Justin Bieber. Like, we probably went up 3 different flights of stairs and then into a separate room, just the amount of security around him, and then hordes of screaming teenage girls outside of the building where we did the interview. It was truly one of the most unique interviews I've ever done.
Oh, that's awesome. Now this will segue well into our next topic, but in one of James Duthie's books, he mentioned that he saw Tiger at the Masters and they were actually in the washroom together somehow. I don't know how this happened, but James went on to say, he was thinking, what do I say to him? I can't shake his hand. So James said, hey, Tiger, good luck today. And Tiger looked at him and said, well, I do this a couple times a day, actually, so I think I'll be okay.
That's so great. Yeah, and the bathroom, like, that's an awkward circumstance, but you got to make the best of the situation, I guess, right? And you can't miss your opportunity to not say hi to Tiger.
Yeah, and I mean, going forward, I don't think we're going to be shaking hands very much, but especially in a washroom, yeah, that's a little off. But I mean, James Duthie's brilliant. Yeah, and I know he has a new book coming out soon, but and he's also a big golfer, and you as well are now a big golfer, as we mentioned. Before we get into your golf game, what were your thoughts on the Tiger, Peyton Manning, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady match?
Oh, I loved it. I was a huge fan. I don't know if you know, actually, it was the most watched golf telecast, I think, in cable TV history.
I did see that.
It shows you how hungry people are for sports. And I mean, I just thought it was amazing. Like, the trash talk going on was so interesting to me. I was a little concerned how everything would sound without fan noise, but I thought it was so funny. And then Brady rips his pants and then he holds out for birdie on the one hole. And then you've got Barkley ripping into them. Like the whole dynamic between everything, I really liked it.
And there was another cool moment early on when Phil Mickelson went into extreme detail of how he hits this chip. You know, It was like 90 seconds long. Yeah, it was awesome.
And just to get into the mind of an athlete like that, like, you know, those are conversations that us as viewers don't normally get to hear. So even their thought process and how they're approaching something, I loved it.
Yeah, it was thoroughly entertaining. And so you've recently started playing golf. Let's talk about that. How did you get back into playing golf?
Okay, so I don't know, back into, I was never really into it growing up. Lacrosse was my main sport, and I played a ton of sports growing up, but you know, in the summers it was kind of lacrosse, and before that soccer, so I didn't play a ton of golf. And it was really when I got to TSN, so many of the anchors golf, and it was Brian Mudrick. He used to host an annual tournament for his charity, and he invited me out to Boyle, Alberta. And I told him, frankly, I was like, I don't really golf, Muddy. Like, I don't think you want me to come to this. He's like, no, it's best ball. People drink so much booze, they won't even know. It's for a really good cause. Just come out. So I agreed. And that was kind of the summer that I forced myself to just start going to the range as much as possible. It was my first year at TSN. I was absolutely awful. I haven't got too much better, but I was really bad back then. But again, I think I just fell in love with it, like anyone does when they start playing golf, because as we all know, you only need one or two decent shots in your entire round, and that gets you out the next time. And then you're just hungry to get a little bit better. And for the first few summers, you know, I was playing with a hodgepodge of borrowed clubs, but just loved it. And now the improvement is very, very gradual. And I still have some bad days, but I can't get enough of it.
Well, I certainly noticed a big improvement. We played right after the CP Women's Open, so that would have been just before Labor Day. And then we played, I think it was October, but it was a really nice day. And the improvement in your game, I think, first of all, because of the tailor-made clubs, I think that also really helped your game. Yeah. But I noticed a big difference, the way you struck the ball in the 5 weeks between when we played.
Hey, well, thanks. I appreciate that. I mean, as you know, with golf, it's all about the reps, right? And you're trying to get out as much as possible. And again, with my schedule, because I'm usually filming SportsCenter at night in the summer, it's amazing because you have your days free, so you can get out. And again, I go back to like the fact that so many of the anchors play, so it's not too hard to find a foursome or just someone to play with, which is amazing. Because if I can get out as much as possible in the summer, that is my dream come true. And yeah, there's still a long way to go, but if they're a slow process, I'm okay with that. And of course, you know, and then we have fun too, where we use a driver on one hole because we're trying to replicate women at the CP Women's Open. That's another story.
Yeah, and well, that story, TSN producer Jamie Rydell made a par using a driver. He was in a bunker, I think. He was putting with it, driver off the deck. We got a lot of it on video, actually, because of course we did. Because it's the Insta world, and as we both know, when you want to Instagram a golf shot or video, the pressure's on, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, you were playing off of the fan deck at one point. So they were trying to close up shop after the CP Women's Open, and they still had, you know, things set up, and we're playing off all these different hazards and using only drivers, but makes the game entertaining. It
sure does. So I mentioned earlier Phil Mickelson, and Phil loves to say that he hits bombs. Do you hit bombs, Lindsay?
No, I don't hit bombs. Maybe once a summer I'll get lucky and I'm like, okay, that's a decent shot, but I don't think I can talk up my own game at all. But that's okay. You know what? And I'm not mad at that. I think it was Dave Poulin, obviously one of our analysts at TSN, who told me, he's like, none of us are good enough to actually get mad at our game. Like, obviously we're all competitive, and you know, we all have that kind of athletic drive to us where you want to see improvements and you're hungry to get better. But at the end of the day, if you're outside on a nice day with three of your buddies, it's a good day in my books.
As I always say, there's a reason we don't play this game for a living, and
yes.
that's a good way that Poulin says. Well, we'll have to get out and play a little later this summer. Before we let you go, I asked Kara Wagland these questions as well. So we've been in quarantine now, coming up on 3 months, which is a little hard to believe. Right. But if you could pick a TSN anchor to quarantine with, who you could stand each other. Let's say it's 2 weeks. You guys would have to cook together, watch Netflix, work out, play golf now, I guess, the works. Who would that be?
That's tough. I'm going to selfishly say someone who could like benefit me. So I immediately think of the bakers at TSN, Natasha Staniszewski and Kara Wagland. Both love to bake, and I love to eat baked goods, particularly chocolate things. So I feel as though that could be, a really good matchup. I could just eat everything they want to test out new recipes with. That is, I'm happy to take that job on. So I'd probably maybe want to quarantine with one of them, or I have to say someone with a pool as the weather gets warmer right now. I don't know if any of the anchors have a pool set up, but I've seen Leo Routon's posting a lot of his wine shots by the pool playing basketball. So I could use a pool in the backyard.
I think Gino Retta does too, actually, come to think of it.
Okay, so maybe I gotta go for a quick swim to stop by.
Have a swim, have a lasagna, have a nicely Italian meal, have the works. Well, actually, when Kara was on the Scully Scoop podcast, we talked about Wangs Kitchen. I want to say for 5 to 7 minutes about all the meals she's cooked. And I asked her to deliver. I haven't seen anything come to my front door yet. So.
You gotta get her on that. I mean, that's the nice thing. So I now, when SportsCenter resumes, host the 1 a.m. loop with Wags. And before Kara Wagland, I hosted it with Natasha Staniszewski. And both of them love to bake. And I'm like, this is a really great situation I have, because before quarantine, they used to always bring the extra baked goods into SportsCenter. But I will say, the newsroom, you have to fend for yourself. Like, I once made the mistake of going down to makeup minutes before someone put a tray of treats out, and I came back, there was nothing gone. Like, if you don't grab them within minutes, you're not getting a slice. So you have to react very quickly.
It's like people haven't eaten before. I think that's the way.
Yeah, it is.
That's the way I describe it. Okay. And on the other side of things, let's say it's 2 weeks. There's someone you just like, you know what? We can't do this. We can't last together. If you could pick someone, poke fun at them, who would that be? A TSN anchor-wise.
I'm trying to give you someone, and I'm not trying to be boring.
You're too nice. It's okay.
Plead the fifth. I genuinely like everyone. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, I like my sleep-ins, especially because I work late.
Right.
So if someone was a really early riser, that probably wouldn't work out too well for me. I like to be outside a lot. I like to talk, so I don't know. Maybe I would get annoyed with someone else. So who knows?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you trying anyway. Lindsay, this has been fun. I really appreciate your time today. All the best here going forward, and hopefully we can get a game of golf here very soon.
I would love that. Yeah, it's so nice to get out, and even today it was, even despite how badly I was playing, it was just such a nice mental unplug from everything. So appreciate you having me on. We'll definitely have to get out sometime this summer.
Have you seen anything like that?
Thanks again to Lindsay Hamilton for joining me on the Scully Scoop podcast. Some great stories from her days at TSN. Well, don't forget, subscribe to me on iTunes and on YouTube. If you're watching this, I'll continue to post these on my own personal Twitter account at Adam_Scully. As well, follow me on Instagram at Scully Scoop. That's where I update you on my guests and give you a little 1-minute teaser of the next episode. My guest next time around, we're going back to a hockey player looking to make it back into the NHL. Well, 12 episodes in the books of the Scully Scoop podcast. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.